There's a new Michael Swanwick collection out called The Universe Box in February 2026. That's right now. I've read an advanced reader copy of this. Let's talk about it. I'm Austin Beeman, and I review thousands of science fiction short stories on my blog at shortsf.com. Michael Swanwick has been one of my favorite authors in science fiction for a very long time. I first came across his stories with the wonderful novella Griffin's Egg, which was published in Isaac Asimov's science fiction magazine when I was a teenager. And I have liked almost everything I've read from him for a very long time, even his forays into fantasy, which are not really something that I'm particularly interested in. This collection, The Universe Box, has some fantasy in it, but also has a lot of really good science fiction. And even the stuff that was in the fantastic, for the most part, was something that I enjoyed and could really get behind. I reviewed this anthology 92% positive, which means that we had 4 great stories, 13 good stories, 1 average story, no poor stories, and only 1 story that I had to DNF. Anything above 90 points is quite the rarity in my blog. And so the fact that this comes in at 92 points and the best of Michael Swanwick came in at 96 points really tells you how much these stories resonate with me. Now let's talk about the 4 stories in this collection that I considered great. The White Leopard is a 2002 story by Michael Swanwick about a military man kind of down on his luck, depressed, doesn't have a particularly good home life, until he finds a broken down second-hand combat drone that he used to operate, and he refurbishes it and goes hunting at night. This is a great story in a science fiction context that really speaks to what happens to men when they come back from the war and their ability to connect or not connect into civilian life. This is also a story that will absolutely rip your heart out in the last couple pages. Requiem for a White Rabbit is a 2026 Michael Swanwick story that starts in kind of a normal setting. You've got a Disney World that isn't Disney World for legal purposes, and a white rabbit that falls over and eventually achieves a higher level of sentience. He liberates a violent Cinderella, who calls herself Cindy, and they kidnap a repair drone, escape the park, and head out into the world. That in and of itself would be enough for most writers in their stories, but in this story, they pick up a hitchhiker who isn't quite what he seems. And the story twists in a really interesting way in the second half that I found really compelling. This was one of the great stories from the Universe Box collection. Cloud is a 2019 science fiction story by Michael Swanwick. The fundamental sci-fi premise is that there is a manufactured and created cloud that hovers above Manhattan, and all of our characters are the insanely wealthy at a party that operates on that cloud. And the interactions, the corruption, the power plays of the wealthy all happen in and around that environment. So it takes this science fiction idea and then layers on top of it a lot of the issues and really the corruption of the ultra wealthy. And it does it in a very interesting way with characters that are very briefly introduced, but are very believable from the get-go. It's very well written, very cool idea, definitely a great story. What if a future America had only women, and then someone made it possible for a boy child to be born? That is the 2023 Michael Swanwick story, Timothy, An Oral History. This story is told in a series of clips of interviews and articles with various people involved as, for the first time in recent memory, the world entirely made up of women has a male child, has a young boy who will grow to adulthood over the course of the story. And it really creates an interesting take on the way in which the world today views boys, masculinity, and really how those things interact. Would the world be better if it was only women? Is introducing men into the world, a literal war crime, as one of the characters says. And it does it with the kind of grace and rigor of science fictional thinking that probably wouldn't happen from a writer today, but that Swanwick, being part of the old guard, has no trouble dealing with. Really funny, really interesting, does some really cool things with pronouns, with language, and I think it's a heck of an interesting story to think about at this moment in political American history. So that's Timothy, An Oral History.